Welcome back to the Financial Chronicles channel. Imagine a world in darkness, literally. It is the mid-19th century. When the sun goes down, the world stops. Candles are dim, whale oil is too expensive for the common man, and productivity dies with the light. But, in the shadows of this darkness, one man saw not just a problem, but an empire. John Davison Rockefeller. To understand the system we live in today, the financial structures, the educational models, the medical industry, and even the way you think about work, you have to go back to the mind of this one man. A man who was often described as cold, silent, and terrifyingly calculated. He didn't just build a company. He constructed a cage, a system so pervasive that today, over a century later, you cannot move without touching one of the bars he forged. But, before he was the titan, he was just a boy with a ledger. Born in 1839 in upstate New York, John's childhood was not normal. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, was known as Devil Bill. He was a con artist, a traveling salesman who sold cancer cures in small bottles. Devil Bill once bragged, "I cheat my boys every chance I get. I want to make him sharp." And sharp, he became. While other children played, young John was loaning money to farmers at interest. He tracked every single penny he earned, spent, or gave away in a small book he called Ledger A. This wasn't just accounting, it was a philosophy. It was the birth of a mind that saw the world not as a place of emotion, but as a machine of inputs and outputs. At age 16, he landed his first job in Cleveland as a bookkeeper. He later said this was the most critical moment of his life. He stared at figures all day. He learned the language of business, the language of profit. He saw that most businesses were chaotic, inefficient, and emotional. He vowed never to be any of those things. Then came the discovery that changed human history. Black gold, oil. In 1859, oil was discovered in Titusville, Pennsylvania. It was a gold rush. Men flooded the hills, digging holes, drinking, fighting, and gambling, hoping to get rich quick. It was chaos. It was madness. But Rockefeller? He didn't rush to drill. He stood back, watched, and realized something profound. The money wasn't in the drilling. Drilling was a gamble. A well could dry up. A well could catch fire. No, the power wasn't in getting the oil out of the ground. The power was in refining it. If you control the refinery, the driller must come to you, and the customer must buy from you. You become the gatekeeper. You become the choke point. He saw the future before anyone else. He saw that kerosene, the refined product of oil, was the light of the world. It would extend the day. It would allow factories to run at night. It would allow people to read after sunset. So, with a silence that would become his trademark, he began to buy. He started with one refinery. He was obsessed with efficiency. While his competitors threw away the waste products, gasoline, tar, and sludge, Rockefeller hired scientists to find a use for them. He turned tar into paving materials. He turned sludge into lubricants. He even sold the gasoline, which was considered useless waste at the time. He squeezed every drop of profit from the barrel. He famously asked a worker, "How many drops of solder do you use to seal a can of kerosene?" The worker said 40. Rockefeller experimented and found that 39 drops would leak, but 40 was too many. He told them to use exactly 39 drops, but apply it differently. That tiny saving, multiplied by millions of cans, saved a fortune. This was the Rockefeller way. Relentless, microscopic, control. But efficiency was only the beginning. To build the system he envisioned, he needed more than just good profit margins. He needed to eliminate the one thing he hated more than anything else. He hated competition. To Rockefeller, competition was a sin. It was a waste of resources. It was chaotic. In his mind, a perfect world was a world of order. And order meant monopoly. He looked at the chaotic oil market of Cleveland, with dozens of small refineries cutting each other's throats on price, and he decided he wouldn't just beat them. He would absorb them. He formed a company with a name that was designed to sound safe, stable, and reliable. Standard Oil. The name itself was a marketing masterstroke. In a time when kerosene often exploded because of poor quality, he offered a standard, a guarantee. But behind this safe name, a war was brewing. A war that would be fought not with guns, but with secret contracts, spies, and handshake deals made in the back of train cars. Rockefeller was about to unleash a strategy so ruthless, so brilliant, and so devastating that it would change the laws of America forever. He was about to teach the world a lesson. You don't play the game. You rig the game. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to own the board. By the early 1870s, Cleveland was the battleground. Rockefeller knew that the lifeblood of the oil industry wasn't just the oil itself, it was transportation. You had to move the oil from the wells to the refineries, and from the refineries to the customers. And how did things move in the 1870s? The railroads. This is where Rockefeller displayed his genius for what we now call the squeeze. He went to the railroad bosses, men like Cornelius Vanderbilt, and he made them an offer they couldn't understand, but couldn't refuse. He guaranteed them massive, steady shipments of oil every single day. In exchange, he demanded a discount, a rebate, but he didn't stop there. This is the part that reveals the true darkness of his brilliance. He demanded that the railroads pay him a rebate, not just on his oil, but on every barrel of oil shipped by his competitors. Think about that for a second. Every time his competition tried to ship a barrel of oil, the price they paid was higher than Rockefeller's, and a portion of the money they paid went directly into Rockefeller's pocket. It was an impossible loop. The more his competitors worked, the richer Rockefeller became. It was known as the South Improvement Company scheme. When the public found out, there were riots. Oil men in Pennsylvania burned Rockefeller in effigy. They called him the Mephistopheles of Cleveland. But Rockefeller? He didn't flinch. He didn't scream. He simply waited. He told his competitors, "We are going to buy you out. We will give you a fair price, usually stock in Standard Oil. If you refuse, we will bankrupt you." Most took the deal. They saw the writing on the wall. They exchanged their struggling refineries for Standard Oil stock. And ironically, those who surrendered early became incredibly wealthy because Standard Oil stock skyrocketed. But those who fought, Rockefeller was merciless. If a local refiner refused to sell, Rockefeller would lower the price of kerosene in that specific town to below the cost of production. He would lose money on every gallon sold, just to bleed his enemy dry. Standard Oil was so big and had such deep pockets that Rockefeller could afford to lose money in one town for months, because he was making millions in other towns. The local competitor would go bankrupt within weeks. Then, Rockefeller would buy their worthless machinery for pennies on the dollar and immediately raise the prices back up. This was the Cleveland Massacre. In just a few months, he went from controlling a fraction of the market to controlling nearly all of the refineries in Cleveland. And from there, he marched across America. Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York. They all fell. By 1880, John D. Rockefeller controlled 90% of the oil refining capacity in the United States. 90%. He controlled the light. He controlled the fuel. He controlled the railroads. He had created the world's first true monopoly. He was richer than kings. He was more powerful than presidents. When he wanted a law changed, he bought the politicians. When he wanted a judge to rule in his favor, he ensured the judge understood who paid the bills. He was building the trust. Because laws in different states made it hard for one company to own property in another state, Rockefeller's lawyers invented a legal loophole called a trust. A group of men, trustees, would hold the shares of all the various companies in different states. It was a singular organism with 9 heads, all controlled by Rockefeller. It was a machine of total dominance. But as his power grew, so did the fear. The American public began to look at Standard Oil not as a business, but as a monster. A giant octopus with tentacles wrapped around the steel industry, the copper industry, the banks, and the government. Cartoons and newspapers depicted Rockefeller as a giant grabbing the White House. He was the most hated man in America. He received death threats daily. He had to hire armed guards. But John D. Rockefeller slept soundly. He believed, truly believed, that he was doing God's work. He believed that competition was wasteful chaos, and that by centralizing control, he was bringing order to humanity. He famously said, "The growth of a large business is merely a survival of the fittest. It is merely the working out of a law of nature and a law of God." He didn't see himself as a villain. He saw himself as a savior of industry. But the system was about to face its biggest challenge yet. The government, pushed by a furious public, was sharpening its knives. A man named Theodore Roosevelt was coming for him. The clash between the president and the titan was inevitable. It would be the trial of the century. However, Rockefeller had a secret weapon. He knew something that the government didn't. He knew that even if they destroyed the body of the beast, the spirit and the money would only grow stronger. He was about to pull off the greatest magic trick in financial history. The year is 1911. The Supreme Court of the United States drops the gavel. The verdict is in. Standard Oil is declared an illegal monopoly, a menace to the free market. The court orders the beast to be slain, to be broken up into 34 separate, smaller companies. The public cheered. The politicians celebrated. They thought they had won. They thought they had destroyed the Rockefeller empire. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Rockefeller was playing 4D chess while everyone else was playing checkers. When the breakup happened, Rockefeller didn't lose his shares. He simply received shares in all 34 of the new companies. He owned a piece of Exxon, a piece of Mobil, a piece of Chevron, a piece of Amoco. And here is the irony that drives economists crazy to this day. Before the breakup, the market value of Standard Oil was suppressed because of the constant legal attacks and the fear of government intervention. But once the companies were separated, the monopoly discount vanished. Wall Street suddenly realized how profitable these individual pieces were. The stock prices exploded. John D. Rockefeller, the man they tried to destroy, saw his net worth double almost overnight. He became the world's first billionaire. In today's money, his wealth was estimated to be somewhere between $300 to $400 billion. That is 3 or 4 times richer than Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. The government had struck him down, and he became more powerful than they could possibly imagine. But Rockefeller knew that this direct power, this visible ownership, was becoming a liability. Being the richest man in the world put a target on his back. The people hated him. The name, Rockefeller, was synonymous with greed and corruption. He needed a pivot. He needed to change the narrative. He needed to build a new kind of system, one that wasn't based on oil tanks and railroads, but on minds and perception. He needed to transition from the titan of industry to the saint of philanthropy. This is where the system you can never escape truly begins. He hired a man named Ivy Lee, the father of modern public relations. Lee told Rockefeller, "Stop hiding. Stop being silent. Let's show them your human side. Let's hand out dimes to children. Let's build libraries." It was a masterclass in image rehabilitation. But Rockefeller wasn't just giving money away to be nice. Remember, this is the man who accounted for every single penny in Ledger A. He didn't spend money, he invested it. He began to pour millions into creating foundations. The Rockefeller Foundation, the General Education Board. This sounds noble, doesn't it? Giving money to schools, giving money to medicine? But look closer. Rockefeller, along with other titans like Andrew Carnegie, realized that the future of labor required a different kind of human being. The industrial age didn't need farmers who worked by the sun. It didn't need independent thinkers who questioned authority. It needed workers. It needed people who could follow instructions, be punctual, handle repetitive tasks, and not ask too many questions. Frederick T. Gates, Rockefeller's trusted advisor, wrote a manifesto for the General Education Board. Listen to these words carefully. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a historical document. Gates wrote, "In our dreams, people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply." Did you catch that? Perfect docility. They didn't want to create a nation of leaders. They wanted to create a nation of employees. The system of education that we have today, the ringing bells, the strict rows of desks, the memorization of facts, the standardized testing, was heavily influenced by the money and philosophy of the Rockefeller General Education Board. It was designed to produce compliant workers for the corporate machine. But education was just one pillar. The other was medicine. At the turn of the century, medicine in America was a mix of everything. Herbalists, homeopaths, natural healers, and allopathic doctors. Rockefeller saw this as disordered, chaotic, unprofitable. He wanted to bring the Standard Oil efficiency to the human body, to control the future of medicine. Rockefeller commissioned the Flexner Report in 1910. Abraham Flexner toured medical schools across America and issued a scathing report. He argued that medical education was too loose, too unscientific, and needed to be standardized. On the surface, this sounds good. We all want safe, scientific doctors. But the result of the report, backed by Rockefeller's massive funding, was that any medical school that didn't adhere to the new, drug-based, petrochemical-focused curriculum was defunded and shut down. Homeopathy? Gone. Natural cures? Labeled as quackery. The new medical system was built around one central idea. For every symptom, there is a pharmaceutical pill. And guess who produced the raw materials for those pills? The petrochemical industry. The oil industry. It was the ultimate synergy. He created the sickness of industrial pollution, and then he sold the cure, derived from the very same oil. By controlling the funding of medical universities, the Rockefeller Foundation effectively decided what was science and what was not. If a researcher wanted a grant, they had to study what the foundation wanted them to study. This is the system. It is subtle. It is invisible. It doesn't look like a monopoly. It looks like philanthropy. It looks like standardization. It looks like science. But it is control. As the 20th century rolled on, the Rockefeller influence expanded into banking. The family became key players in Chase Manhattan Bank, now JP Morgan Chase. They became instrumental in the creation of the Federal Reserve, the central bank that controls the very money in your pocket. They understood that if you control the energy, oil, you control the nations. If you control the food, you control the people. And if you control the money, you control the world. Rockefeller's son, John D. Rockefeller Jr., continued the legacy. He donated the land in New York City where the United Nations headquarters stands today. Think about the symbolism of that. The world government, sitting on Rockefeller land. They were building a global structure. David Rockefeller, the grandson, was perhaps the most influential of them all in the modern era. He was the chairman of Chase Manhattan. He founded the Trilateral Commission. He was a key figure in the Council on Foreign Relations. In his own memoirs, David Rockefeller wrote something that chills the bone of anyone who values national sovereignty. He wrote, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it. One world." He admitted it. The system wasn't just about making money anymore. It was about shaping the geopolitical landscape of the entire planet. From the kerosene lamp in 1860 to the global banking digital networks of 2024, the line is direct. The philosophy hasn't changed. Consolidate, control, standardize. They built the highway system you drive on to burn their gasoline. They influenced the schools you send your kids to train them for their corporations. They funded the medical system you rely on. And they did it all while convincing the world they were just benevolent philanthropists. John D. Rockefeller Sr. died in 1937 at the age of 97. He didn't reach his goal of 100 years, but his legacy is immortal. When he died, he didn't really die. He just became the system. But what does this mean for you? Today? Right now? It means that the matrix is real. Not the digital simulation from the movies, but a financial and structural matrix designed over a century ago by a man who viewed human beings as components in a machine. When you feel the pressure of inflation, remember the Federal Reserve and the banking dynasties that birthed it. When you feel that the education system isn't teaching you how to be wealthy, but only how to work for someone else, remember the General Education Board and its mandate for docility. When you look at the pharmaceutical industry posting record profits while chronic disease skyrockets, remember the Flexner Report and the pivot to petrochemical medicine. The genius of John D. Rockefeller was not that he was a tyrant who ruled with an iron fist. No, that would be too easy to rebel against. His genius was that he built a prison without walls. He built a system that is so integrated into our daily lives that we defend it. We fight for it. We think it's the only way things can be. We rely on the standard. But awareness is the first step to freedom. Understanding that the economy, the school system, and the medical industry were shaped by a specific group of men with a specific agenda allows you to look at the world differently. It allows you to question the narrative. Rockefeller once said, "I would rather earn 1% off a 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own efforts." That is the secret of the wealthy. Leverage, systems, control. The system he created is designed to keep you providing that 1% of effort to them forever, to keep you in the cycle of earn, spend, owe, and obey. But the cracks are showing. The internet, decentralized finance, alternative education, independent media. These are the things that the monopolist fears, because these are the things he cannot control. The darkness that Rockefeller capitalized on in 1860 was the literal darkness of night. Today, the darkness is ignorance, and the light is knowledge. He illuminated the world with kerosene, but he tried to dim the minds of the masses with his systems. Now, it is up to you to turn the lights back on, to see the bars of the cage, to understand the history of the money in your pocket, to realize that the game was rigged before you were even born. John D. Rockefeller was a titan, a genius, a ruthless conqueror. He created the modern world, but he doesn't have to own your future. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Financial Chronicles. If you want to understand more about how money really works and the history they don't teach you in school, make sure to smash that like button. It helps us break through the algorithm, which is its own kind of monopoly. Share this video with someone who needs to wake up. And most importantly, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We are just getting started. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and follow the money.